On the last video, I got stuck in that instead of hitting pause, I hit end. And so I stopped the video and I couldn't get back into it. So let me finish up part two where I stopped off. So I'm getting an error message here. And so the error message is that the index is invalid. The index must be an integer, not less than the origin, and not greater than the last element. So what Mathcad is telling me here is that the default origin for indexes is 0. So what that would mean is that this row 1 and 2 would be the 0th row, and the column 1, 3 would be the 0th column. So when I write down a index, the second row, first column, Mathcad's telling me there is no second row, first column because everything is indexed starting at 0. So an easy fix to this is go up to the calculation toolbar, under origin, type in 1, and so now that sets everything at 1 instead of 0 to start crunching along with our indexes. So it's a big deal, but the default value is 0 in Mathcad. But if you're more comfortable working with indices that start at 1 as opposed to 0, then you can just change the origin button and you start at 1 instead of 0. So now this makes this work. So if I go back in here and type in my equal key, then now I've got the appropriate column vector pulled out from my matrix as 1, 3. And I could do the same thing with the rows or however I wanted to do. So again, if I go back to our matrices and our operators here, I can take the cross product of two matrices. I can returns a column from a matrix. So let's use that value. So let's say I want to, instead of doing it this way where I actually tell or I set the indices in each of the places, let me just use that function to return the column vector, which would be right there. And now I've got a superscript, and I'm going to type in 1 and then the equal sign, and that gives me the first column. So that's another way to do it. Notice that it's a little bit easier just to return the columns using this superscript operator. I can do the same thing with a row, or this particular index gives me the return individual elements of a matrix, but this one gives me a row. So let me go ahead and do that. So let's type in M, and let's say I want the second row. Let's put a 2 in and then an equal sign, and it gives me the second row, 1, 3. So I've got all these different functions. I can take determinants, I can figure the eigenvalues, I can determine eigenvectors, I can look stuff up, I can determine the lowest value in a matrix, the highest value, and basically you can write a finite element program in Mathcad. It'll be slow and it's not the way to go about doing it, but for teaching purposes it would be great if you wanted to do it piecewise. And you can set up for more simple type of problem using matrices and determinants and things like that. You can use these functions to get values. Eigenvectors and eigenvalues are pretty easily attainable in Mathcad. So we've talked about how to get the functions, and again, you can close this window if you want to. We've talked a little bit about matrices. I've talked some about plots, how there's two different ways of plots. We've talked about the formatting. The text formatting is very simple, the same as any particular Windows program. You can change the font, the text size. You can. It's pretty standard there. This will be important on the calculation page. Sometimes, like we'll see when we're writing a program, sometimes you can make a mistake in writing a program and get stuck in a loop. And the only way to get out of it is to, either close the program, or here in Mathcad, you can hit this button that stops the calculation. So if you got something really complicated going, sometimes it'll slow you down when you're doing a template, because every time you hit the enter key after entering an expression, it'll recalculate the entire worksheet. Sometimes you don't want that to happen. You want to stop that so that you can go back in and at various times calculate the worksheet and see how you're doing. There's also some debugging tools in here that at some point we'll probably go into. That's still on this screen as well. And so I think we've covered most everything that's on the ribbon in Mathcad. The next videos, what we'll do is that we'll start taking individual kind of problems and solve them using the power of Mathcad. We'll probably do some calculus, we'll do some engineering calculations, and we'll look at some programming of how to take use of all these powerful features in Mathcad. And we'll probably do it by what I call a process of induction. In other words, we'll just start working on problems. As we work these problems, we'll be able to bring in different aspects of Mathcad. Since Prime 5 is brand new, I'm still exploring all the capabilities myself, and so I think this will be an interesting journey for all of us. So I'm going to stop this part 2A of this video, and we'll move on to other aspects of using Mathcad in some of the next videos that we have.